Captain Jake Morrison sat in the hard crystal chair and felt every muscle in his back complain about the weird shape. The chair was made for aliens, not humans, and after 3 hours of listening to complaints about his people, he was ready to stand up and walk out. But he stayed because that was what Earth had sent him here to do. Around the huge round room, 47 different alien species sat in their own special chairs. Some had tentacles, some had 6 arms, some looked like giant bugs, and some were just weird shapes that hurt to look at too long. All of them were staring at the 3 humans like they were some kind of dangerous animals that might bite. Dr. Lisa Hartwell sat next to Jake and tried not to show how angry she was getting. She was Earth's best expert on alien life and had spent 15 years trying to help these species understand each other better. Now they were all ganging up on humanity like school bullies. The tall blue alien from Zephyr Prime was still talking, in that boring voice that made Jake want to take a nap. "Humans are too wild," the alien said through the translation machine. "They do not follow our rules. They ask too many questions. They make friends with species we told them to stay away from. This is not how civilized beings act." Jake almost laughed at that. Civilized beings. These aliens had been having the same boring meetings for thousands of years and never got anything done. They were so scared of change that they made rules about everything. Rules about which planets you could visit. Rules about what technology you could share. Rules about who you could be friends with. The humans had tried to follow their stupid rules for 15 years, but it was like trying to breathe underwater. Admiral Ben Rodriguez was the 3rd human in the room and the most patient of the 3. He had been a soldier for 30 years and knew how to stay calm when people were being unfair. But even he was getting tired of listening to the same complaints over and over. A snake-like alien from Cathra slithered up to the speaking platform. "The worst thing about humans," it hissed, "is that they make other species act like humans. Young Korvan explorers now ask why they cannot visit forbidden systems. Nexari scientists want to share research without permission. This human disease of curiosity is spreading." More aliens stood up to agree. The bug-like hierarchy representative clicked its mandibles loudly. The crystal beings from Alturus chimed like broken bells. The floating gas-bag creatures from the outer rim puffed up with indignation. Every single one of them had something bad to say about humans. Lisa finally could not stay quiet anymore. "You call curiosity a disease," she said, standing up so her voice would carry better. "You think asking questions is dangerous. You believe making friends with different species is wrong. What kind of civilization are you really running here?" The chamber went silent. Aliens were not used to being talked back to, especially not by the species they were trying to kick out. "We have brought you medicine that saved millions of lives," Lisa continued. "We shared farming techniques that ended hunger on 12 worlds. We helped negotiate peace between the Vorthans and the Kaleri after they had been fighting for 300 years. And you call this dangerous?" The chairman, a huge insect thing that looked like it was made of metal, buzzed angrily. "Order! Order! The human will be silent while we deliberate." But Jake was standing up now, too. "No," he said in a voice that made every alien in the room pay attention. "We have been silent for 15 years while you complained about everything we did to help. We are done being silent." Ben stood up last, his military uniform looking sharp even after the long session. "You want to vote us out?" he asked. "Go ahead and vote. But understand what you are really doing. You are not getting rid of troublemakers. You are throwing away the only species in this galaxy that remembers how to grow." The voting took an hour. 46 species voted to expel humanity from the Galactic Council. Only the 3 humans voted against it. Jake looked around the chamber. One more time. These aliens thought they were so advanced, so civilized, so much better than the wild humans. But they were really just scared. Scared of change, scared of growth, scared of anything that might make them think differently. "We came here hoping to join a community of intelligent beings," Jake said as they prepared to leave. "Instead, we found a nursing home for species too old and tired to explore anymore." Lisa gathered up her research materials, 15 years of work trying to build bridges between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. We offered you friendship, knowledge, and partnership, she said. You chose fear instead. Ben was the last to move toward the exit. He stopped at the doorway and looked back at all the alien representatives. The universe is a big place, he said simply. We will find our own way forward. You can keep your safe little corner of space and your endless meetings. Just remember that we offered to share the journey with you. The three humans walked out of the chamber, and the doors sealed behind them with a sound like thunder. For the first time in galactic history, a species had been formally expelled from the Council. As they walked down the long corridor toward their ship, Lisa shook her head. They have no idea what they just did, she said. Jake smiled for the first time in hours. No, he agreed. But they will find out soon enough. Behind them, in the council chamber, the aliens were already congratulating themselves on solving their human problem. They thought expelling the troublesome species would bring back the quiet, predictable order they loved so much. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Commander Susan Blake stood at the big window of the UES Pioneer and watched the last human ships leave council space. 3 months had passed since the expulsion, and every human colony, research station, and trading post was packing up and moving out. The aliens had given them 6 months to leave. But humans were efficient when they were angry. Dr. Peter Grant walked up beside her carrying a datapad full of survey reports. He was excited in the way that scientists got when they found something interesting. The exploration teams have found 17 systems that could support human colonies, he said. All of them are outside the Council's territory, in areas they consider too dangerous to explore. Susan laughed. Too dangerous for them, maybe. Humans have been dealing with dangerous places since we lived in caves. Show me what we found. Peter activated the holographic display, and star maps filled the air between them. Red dots marked the systems the Council had declared off-limits. Yellow dots showed areas they considered economically worthless. Green dots marked the places where humans were already setting up new homes. The Council species have gotten soft, Peter explained. They only want to colonize planets that are exactly like their homeworlds. Perfect temperature, perfect atmosphere, no dangerous animals or weather. They gave up exploring centuries ago. Colonel Amy Stevens joined them at the display. She was in charge of coordinating the evacuation, and she had been working 20-hour days to make sure every human got out safely. Colony groups Alpha through Delta are already building settlements in the Outer Rim systems, she reported. Manufacturing platforms are being deployed along our new trade routes. The Industrial Committee has approved construction of shipyards at Haven's Rest and New Colorado. Susan nodded approvingly. Amy had a gift for organization that made complex operations look easy. What about the species that wanted to come with us? The Nexari have sent 3 colony ships to join our settlements, Amy said. The Corvan republics are being more careful, but they have open secret trade negotiations. A few other species have sent unofficial observers to see what we are building. This was the part that made Susan smile. The Council had expelled humanity, thinking they were getting rid of a problem, but several younger species had been watching the humans with interest rather than fear. These species were tired of the Council's endless rules and committees that never accomplished anything. Peter pulled up another star chart. The really interesting thing is what we found in the Forbidden Zones. The Council marked these areas as dangerous, but our survey teams are not finding any major threats. No hostile aliens, no unstable stars, no dangerous anomalies. It is like they were afraid of empty space. Not empty, Susan corrected. Unexplored. The Council species stopped exploring so long ago that they forgot how to tell the difference between dangerous and unknown. She was right. The regions beyond Council space were full of opportunities that no one had bothered to investigate. Planets rich in rare minerals, asteroid fields full of valuable metals, and ancient structures that suggested previous civilizations had once lived in these systems. Dr. Grant was practically bouncing with excitement as he showed them the latest Discoveries. Colony ship Endeavour found ruins on Kepler 442b that appear to be at least 50,000 years old. The architecture is unlike anything in Council databases. Colony ship Horizon discovered a derelict space station in the Vega sector that is built from materials we cannot even identify. Amy looked concerned. Are these ruins dangerous? Could they be why the Council avoids these areas? The radiation. Scans are clean, Peter assured her. Whatever civilization built these structures, they have been gone for a very long time. But the technology they left behind is far more advanced than anything the Council species possess. Susan studied the data with growing interest. Ancient alien ruins were exactly the kind of discovery that Council archaeologists would spend decades getting permission to investigate. Human explorers had found them in 3 months and were already learning from them. What kind of technology are we talking about? She asked. Peter's eyes lit up. Energy generation systems that are 90% more efficient than our current reactors. Artificial gravity generators that do not require massive rotating sections. Materials that are stronger than anything we can manufacture but weigh half as much as aluminum. The implications were staggering. While the Council species had spent millennia perfecting the same old technologies, some unknown civilization had developed solutions that were generations ahead of current galactic science. And now humans were the only ones studying these advances. Colony. Ship reports continued to stream in over the following weeks. New Eden Colony had established mining operations that were already producing rare elements at unprecedented rates. Haven's Rest was building a shipyard that would be capable of constructing vessels twice the size of anything in the Council fleets. New Colorado was developing agricultural techniques that could feed 10 times as many people per square kilometer as traditional Council farming, but the most significant discovery came from the exploration vessel UES Pathfinder. Captain Helen Brooks and her crew had found something in the Centauri sector that would change everything. It is not just ruins, Helen reported during the weekly command briefing. It is an entire complex of structures, including what appears to be a massive data storage facility. Dr. Rachel Kim and her archaeology team believe it contains information about the civilization that built all these sites. Susan leaned forward in her command chair. What kind of information? We are still working on the translation, but the preliminary scans suggest technical manuals, historical records, and what might be star charts showing the locations of similar facilities throughout this region of space. The room went quiet as everyone absorbed the implications. The unknown civilization had not just left behind random ruins. They had left behind a comprehensive database of their technology and knowledge, scattered across dozens of systems that the Council had been too afraid to explore. Dr. Grant was the first to speak. If we can access that database, we could advance human technology by centuries in just a few years. Amy was more practical. And if the Council finds out what we discovered out here, they will want it for themselves. Susan stood up and walked back to the observation window. Outside, human ships continued their steady exodus from Council territory, carrying millions of people toward an uncertain but promising future. The aliens who had expelled them thought they were watching humanity retreat in defeat. They had no idea that they were witnessing the beginning of humanity's greatest expansion in history. Dr. Rachel Kim floated through the ancient corridor in her environmental suit, following the beam of her flashlight as it revealed walls covered in symbols that no living being had seen for 50,000 years. The space station was massive, easily 10 times larger than anything humans had ever built, and it was just one of dozens they had found in this region of space. Engineer Tony Martinez drifted beside her, his scanner beeping steadily as it recorded the alien writing. "This is the 7th major site we have discovered," he said through the CUM system. "Each one shows evidence of technology that makes our best equipment look like stone tools." Captain Helen Brooks waited in the central chamber where her team had set up their temporary command post. The UES Pathfinder was docked to the station's outer ring, and her crew had been exploring the structure for 2 weeks. Every day brought new discoveries that challenged everything they thought they knew about galactic history. The builders of this place understood physics in ways we are only beginning to grasp, Dr. Kim reported as she examined a wall panel that still glowed with soft blue light after millennia of abandonment. They had faster-than-light communication, matter conversion technology, and artificial gravity systems that operate without moving parts. Tony's engineering background helped him understand the practical implications. Their power generation systems are incredible. This entire station is still running on backup power after 50,000 years. Our best reactors would have failed. After a few decades? Back on Earth, Director Carl Watson sat in his office reading reports that seemed like science fiction. Human exploration teams had spread across the Outer Rim territories and were making discoveries that would revolutionize galactic civilization. Ancient libraries containing the accumulated knowledge of a vanished species. Automated factories that could manufacture materials stronger than diamond. And most remarkably, evidence that the mysterious builders had deliberately prepared for. Someone defined their legacy, the council species continued their routine business, completely unaware of what humanity was uncovering in the regions they considered worthless. Trade flowed along the same routes it had followed for centuries. Diplomatic meetings addressed the same minor disputes that had been argued for decades, and bureaucrats filed reports that no one would ever read. Meanwhile, several younger species were quietly maintaining contact with human colonies. The Nexari found human adaptability fascinating rather than threatening, and their scientists were eager to learn from the discoveries being made in the Outer Rim. The Corvan republics had grown tired of council bureaucracy and were impressed by how quickly humans could turn ideas into reality. Dr. Kim's team made their most significant breakthrough 3 weeks into their exploration of the ancient station. Deep in the core structure, they found a chamber that had remained sealed since the day the builders departed. When they finally managed to open it, they discovered something that changed their understanding of everything. "It is a message," Rachel said, her voice filled with awe as she studied the holographic display that had activated when they entered the room. Not just text or symbols, but an actual recording left by the builders themselves. The figure in the recording was humanoid, but clearly not human. Tall and graceful, with features that suggested intelligence and wisdom, it spoke in a language that the translation computers could barely process. But the mathematical concepts it displayed were universal, and slowly the meaning became clear. They called themselves the Guardians, Tony translated, working with the station's ancient computer systems. They were not from this region of space originally. They came here to guide the development of younger civilizations, helping them avoid the mistakes that had destroyed previous galactic communities. Helen studied the star charts that accompanied the message. These maps show the locations of Guardian facilities throughout the Outer Rim territories. There are hundreds of them, maybe thousands. But the most important part of the message was still to come. The Guardian in the recording gestured to symbols that appeared around the chamber, and the translation computers worked frantically to decode their meaning. "The Guardians did not disappear," Rachel said slowly as the meaning became clear. "They left deliberately, but they plan to return. This message says they will come back when the galaxy faces its greatest trial, and only species that demonstrate adaptability and growth will be allowed to survive." Tony felt a chill run down his spine despite his environmental suit's heating system. "When are they supposed to return?" The answer was displayed in mathematical formulas that showed orbital mechanics and stellar positions. Dr. Kim ran the calculations 3 times before she was willing to believe the result. According to this, the Guardians should return within the next 2 years, she said quietly, maybe sooner. The implications were staggering. An advanced civilization that had disappeared 50,000 years ago was planning to come back and test the current galactic species. And from what the message suggested, most civilizations failed this test. Reports from other exploration teams began to paint a disturbing picture. The Guardian ruins were not randomly scattered across the Outer Rim. They were positioned at strategic points that would allow monitoring of the entire galaxy. Ancient sensor arrays that were still functional, communication networks that could coordinate across vast distances, and most ominously, automated defense systems that remain dormant but ready to activate. They have been watching us this whole time, Helen realized as she studied the data. The Guardians never really left. They just stepped back to observe how galactic civilization developed. Dr. Kim discovered additional recordings that explained the Guardian philosophy. They believed that civilizations had to prove themselves worthy of advancement by demonstrating key characteristics: the willingness to explore unknown regions, the ability to adapt to new challenges, the capacity to cooperate with different species, and most importantly, the courage to continue growing rather than becoming stagnant. The Council species had failed every one of these tests. They had stopped exploring, refused to change their ways, maintained rigid hierarchies that prevented cooperation, and created rules designed to prevent growth rather than encourage it. Humanity, on the other hand, had been demonstrating all the Guardian virtues since the day they left Council space. They explored dangerous regions, adapted quickly to new challenges, formed alliances with different species, and never stopped pushing the boundaries of what was possible. As more Guardian sites were discovered and their messages translated, pattern emerged. The ancient civilization had not just left behind technology and knowledge. They had left behind a test, spread across thousands of worlds, designed to identify which species would be worthy of inheriting their legacy, and based on everything they had learned, humanity was about to become the first species in 50,000 years to pass that test. The question was whether they would be ready for what came next. Tony looked up from his scanner as they prepared to leave the Guardian station. "Do you think the Council species know about any of this?" Rachel shook her head. "They marked all these regions as too dangerous to explore. They have been avoiding the answer to the galaxy's greatest mystery for thousands of years." "Their loss?" Helen said simply. "We will be ready for whatever the Guardians have planned. The Council will have to face the test blind." The first ship disappeared on a Tuesday morning in the Corven sector. The cargo vessel New Dawn was carrying routine supplies to a mining colony when it simply vanished from all sensors. No distress signal, no debris field, no trace that it had ever existed. The Corven authorities filed a standard missing vessel report and assumed it was a mechanical failure. 2 weeks later, an entire colony went silent. Bateric 7 had been home to 50,000 hierarchy workers who mined rare crystals for Council technology. The automated systems continued to function perfectly, sending regular status reports that showed everything was normal. But when a supply ship arrived, they found empty buildings, abandoned equipment, and no sign of what had happened to the colonists. Council Chairman Vex Prime received the reports in his office overlooking the capital city of Nexus Prime. The towering insect creature had ruled the Council for 2 centuries and prided himself on maintaining order throughout galactic civilization. These disappearances were a threat to that order, and threats had to be eliminated. "The pattern is clear," he announced during an emergency session of the Council leadership. "Human raiders are attacking our outer colonies in revenge for their expulsion. Their chaotic nature has finally revealed itself in acts of pure terrorism." The other Council leaders clicked and buzzed their agreement. The Serpentine Kethrin representative hissed with satisfaction at being proven right about human danger. The crystal beings from Altruis chimed in harmony about the wisdom of expelling the troublesome species, but Admiral Craig Johnson knew they were wrong. The commander of the UES Defiant was stationed in the Kepler sector, monitoring Council communications and tracking the strange disappearances. His sensors had detected energy signatures that matched nothing in human technology but did match readings his science teams had found in the ancient Guardian ruins. "These are not human attacks," he reported to Colonial Command during a secure transmission. "Whatever is taking Council ships and colonies is using technology far beyond anything we possess." Dr. Michelle Carter had become Earth's leading expert on Guardian civilization during her months of studying the ancient records. She stood before the Human Colonial Council with data that painted a terrifying picture of what was happening in Council space. The disappearances follow the same pattern described in Guardian historical records, she explained to the assembled colonial governors and military leaders. Every 50,000 years, automated systems activate to test the current galactic civilizations. Species that pass the test are elevated to guardian status. Those that fail are eliminated. Governor Steve Phillips of New Colorado leaned forward in his chair. He had been a corporate executive before the expulsion and understood the importance of being prepared for challenges. What exactly are these tests measuring? Adaptability, growth potential, willingness to explore and change. Michelle replied, "The Guardian records show that most civilizations fail because they become too rigid and comfortable. They stop evolving and start stagnating. The Council species were experiencing exactly that kind of stagnation. Their fleets responded to the disappearances with the same tactics they had used for centuries, sending heavily armed patrol groups to follow predictable routes through well-mapped space. When the Guardian probes encountered these patrols, the ancient technology made short work of weapons and defenses that had not been updated in generations. Meanwhile, panic was spreading through Council territory as more colonies and ships vanished. The Vorthan Trade Federation lost 3 cargo fleets in a single week. The Altruist Crystal Collective watched helplessly as their mining operations went dark one by one. The hierarchy's military response was to build bigger weapons and thicker armor, completely missing the point of what they were facing. Some species were beginning to understand that traditional approaches would not work. The Nexari government sent a diplomatic vessel to the human colony of Haven's Rest, carrying an urgent message from their High Council. "Our worlds are disappearing," the Nexari ambassador explained to Colonial Administrator Brian Hayes. "We have lost contact with 12 systems in the past month. Our scientists believe the attackers are using technology that operates outside normal space-time parameters." Brian had been expecting this visit. Intelligence reports from human observers throughout the galaxy suggested that the younger Council species were realizing they needed help. "What do you want from us?" "Partnership," the ambassador replied without hesitation. "The Nexari government formally requests to join the Human Colonial Confederation. We believe our survival depends on learning to adapt as quickly as humans do." The human response was swift and decisive. Captain Danny Foster led a task force of 12 ships to Nexari space, bringing with them Guardian-derived shield generators, sensor arrays, and weapon systems that human engineers had reverse-engineered from ancient technology. The installation process took 3 weeks. Human technicians worked alongside Nexari engineers to integrate Guardian technology with existing infrastructure. The shield generators were based on principles that neither species fully understood, but the ancient manuals provided clear instructions for their operation. When the Guardian probes struck the Nexari system of Colvin 4, they encountered something that had not existed anywhere in the galaxy for 50,000 years. The Guardian shields held against energy weapons that could vaporize normal matter. The human Nexari Joint Defense Fleet did not just survive the attack, they drove the attackers off. Word of the successful defense spread through galactic communication networks faster than official reports could be filed. For the first time since the crisis began, someone had found a way to fight back against the mysterious attackers. And that someone was the species the Council had expelled as too dangerous to associate with. The Corvan Republics immediately sent their own delegation to human space. The Altruist Crystal Collective began secret negotiations for protective technology. Even some of the more rigid species started to consider whether their traditional isolation policies might need to be reconsidered, but the Council leadership refused to acknowledge what was happening. Chairman Vex Prime issued orders forbidding any contact with human colonies, declaring that accepting help from expelled species would be a sign of weakness that would encourage other rebellions. "We have maintained order in this galaxy for thousands of years," he announced during a council session that was broadcast throughout their territory. "We will not abandon our principles because of temporary setbacks." The temporary setbacks continued to mount. Entire sectors were going dark as the Guardian probes expanded their testing operations. Council fleets found themselves completely outmatched by technology that seemed to operate by different physical laws. Dr. Carter watched the reports coming in from Council space with a mixture of sympathy and frustration. They still do not understand what they are facing, she told the Colonial Council. They think this is a military problem that can be solved with bigger guns and stronger walls. Admiral Johnson had positioned his ships along the border between human and Council territory, ready to assist any species that asked for help. The Guardian probes are not trying to conquer territory, he reported. They are testing each species to see how they respond to unprecedented challenges. The Council species keep failing because they refuse to change their approach. As more human-allied systems successfully defended against Guardian attacks, a pattern became clear. Species that demonstrated adaptability, cooperation, and willingness to embrace new technology were surviving the tests. Those that relied on rigid hierarchies and traditional responses were being systematically eliminated. The galaxy was facing its greatest trial in 50,000 years, and only one group of species had figured out how to pass the test. The question now was whether the Council would swallow their pride and ask for help before it was too late. Chairman Vex Prime sat in his office watching reports of another failed defense operation. Deep down, he was beginning to realize that his civilization's greatest enemy might not be the mysterious attackers or the expelled humans. It might be their own unwillingness to change. Chairman Vex Prime had never felt smaller than he did walking through the corridors of Haven's Rest Colony. The massive insect leader who had ruled the Galactic Council for 2 centuries found himself surrounded by bustling activity that made his own capital seem quiet and lifeless by comparison. Humans, Nexari, Corvin, and 3 other species worked side by side, building, exploring, and creating things that would have taken the Council decades of committee meetings to approve. Governor Alex Turner greeted the Council delegation in a conference room that overlooked a city of 2 million beings from 6 different species. The view was deliberately chosen to show Vex Prime what cooperation looked like when it was not strangled by bureaucracy and fear. Half our territory has gone dark, Vex Prime admitted, his proud bearing finally broken by 18 months of catastrophic losses. Our fleets cannot stand against these attackers. Our colonies are defenseless. We need your help. The other Council representatives shifted uncomfortably behind their leader. The crystal being from Altruist chimed softly with embarrassment. The Serpentine Kethrin delegate kept its eyes fixed on the floor. They had come here to beg for help from the species they had expelled as too dangerous for civilized society. Dr. Carter activated a holographic display that filled the center of the room with a map of the galaxy. Red zones marked areas where the Guardian probes had eliminated entire civilizations. Green zones showed regions under human protection where species had successfully passed the ancient tests. The entities you are facing are not invaders, she explained patiently. They are automated systems left behind by the Guardian civilization. Every 50,000 years they activate to test current galactic species. Those that demonstrate adaptability, cooperation, and willingness to grow are permitted to continue. Those that have become stagnant are eliminated to make room for new civilizations. Captain Morrison, who had been quietly observing from the back of the room, stepped forward. We tried to tell you that the galaxy does not pause for anyone. You chose to ignore that warning. Vex Prime's compound eyes focused on the human captain who had once sat in his council chamber. What do you want in return for your assistance? Governor Turner had been expecting this question. Full membership in the galactic community for all our allied species. An end to your rigid hierarchies that prevent exploration and development. A formal apology for the way humanity and our allies were treated. And most importantly, a commitment to real change in how the galaxy is governed. Impossible, protested another council member. The hierarchies have maintained order for millennia. You cannot expect us to abandon everything that has made our civilization stable. Admiral Rodriguez, now commanding humanity's rapidly expanding fleet, smiled grimly. Your civilization is not stable, it is dying. Half your territory is gone and the rest will follow unless you learn to adapt. We have already proven we can survive the Guardian tests. We do not need the Council's permission to continue existing. As if summoned by his words, alarm sirens began sounding throughout the colony. The Guardian probes had found Haven's Rest, but instead of the panic that gripped Council worlds during these encounters, the human response was swift and organized. Citizens moved to designated shelters in an orderly fashion while defense teams took their positions. Children were calm because they had practiced these drills dozens of times. Emergency services activated backup systems that had been tested and retested until they worked perfectly. Shield generators powered up around the colony, creating barriers that shimmered with the same energy signatures found in ancient Guardian ruins. The colonial defense fleet moved into formation, their ships equipped with technology that human engineers had not just copied from Guardian designs but had actually improved upon. Vex Prime watched in amazement as the human colony prepared for an attack that would have sent Council species into complete chaos. "How are they so calm?" he asked Governor Turner. "Because we have been preparing for this since the day we left Council space," Alex replied. "We knew the Guardian tests were coming, so we made sure our people would be ready." The Guardian probes appeared at the edge of the system like dark shadows against the stars. They were massive constructs that seemed to bend space around them, using technology that operated by principles current galactic science barely understood. These were the same entities that had eliminated hundreds of Council worlds without taking any damage themselves. The test began with energy weapons that could vaporize normal matter, striking the colony's shields. But these were not normal shields. Human engineers had studied Guardian technology for months, learning not just how to copy it, but how to make it better. The barriers held against attacks that had destroyed entire fleets. The Guardian probes responded by increasing their assault, using weapons that attacked on multiple dimensional levels simultaneously. Still, the shields held. They deployed boarding craft that could phase through normal defenses. Human Marines were waiting for them with weapons and armor based on the same dimensional manipulation principles. For 6 hours, the ancient testing systems threw everything they had at the human colony. Energy weapons, matter disruptors, temporal anomalies, and reality warping technologies that should have been impossible to defend against. Every attack was met with countermeasures that the defenders had prepared in advance. When the test finally ended, the Guardian probes transmitted a message that human scientists had been hoping to receive for months. The translation appeared on screens throughout the colony in dozens of languages. Status: approved for advancement. New Guardian protocol activated. Vex Prime stared at the message in stunned silence. The ancient machines had not just acknowledged humanity's survival. They had elevated the species to Guardian status, making them inheritors of technologies and responsibilities that stretched back 50,000 years. But the real shock came when additional messages began arriving from Guardian facilities throughout the galaxy. Humanity was not just being recognized as worthy of survival. They were being designated as the new caretakers of galactic civilization, with authority to guide the development of other species and determine who would be allowed to continue existing. "The offer still stands," Governor Turner said quietly as the implications sank in. "Join us in building a better galactic community, one that embraces growth and change instead of fearing it. Or continue trying to maintain your old ways and see how long you last when the next round of tests begins." Dr. Carter pulled up additional data showing Guardian facilities coming online throughout the galaxy. "The testing cycle is not over," she explained. "Species that fail the initial trials get a second chance, but only if they demonstrate genuine willingness to change. Those that refuse to adapt will face elimination in the final phase." Looking out at the thriving colony where beings from multiple species work together to push the boundaries of science and exploration, Vex Prime finally understood what the Council had lost when they expelled humanity. They had not gotten rid of a troublesome species. They had thrown away their own future. "What would membership in your confederation require?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "Everything you are afraid to do," Alex replied honestly. "Exploring unknown regions instead of avoiding them. Sharing technology instead of hoarding it. Treating other species as equals instead of ranking them in hierarchies. growing and changing instead of staying the same? The chairman looked around the room at his fellow council members. Some were nodding slowly, finally understanding that their choice was not between change and stability. It was between evolution and extinction. We will need time to convince our populations, Vex Prime said finally. Time is exactly what you do not have, Admiral Rodriguez replied. The Guardian systems are already preparing for the final phase of testing. Species that have not demonstrated genuine change within the next 6 months will be eliminated permanently. As the Council delegation prepared to leave Haven's Rest, they carried with them the knowledge that the